Well, welcome everyone. This is a kind of a hot subject. You hear more and more about it all the time. I'm not sure if it's because there's more testing now and more genetic work being done that leads to testing, or if it's getting more prevalent. But we're lucky to have Dr. Holly Neaton here with the OPP Society, and she's going to enlighten us about several aspects of the OPP problem and maybe give us some solutions. But with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Holly, and would you please lead us through this problem? And thank you for being here.
Oh, well, yeah. Thanks for asking me. It's nice to know that people are interested in it because for years and years and years, and nobody wanted to know anything about it or thought it wasn't a problem. Um, just a little introduction. I live in Minnesota, Watertown, Minnesota, about 30 miles west of the Twin Cities. On a farm, we raise polypay sheep, and I think this is our 40th year that we've had that since I've had polypays. Um, I was a dairy practitioner for about 20 years till the dairy left around this area. Then I started working with medical device companies and really got into testing for a lot of different diseases. They needed specific pathogen-free, mostly sheep, but goats and cattle too for their devices. And so anyway, and I've been for the OPP Society, it's been years and years that I've kind of been a liaison or a outreach director, and I get calls from all over the country, especially around lambing time. But people wondering about, do I have the virus? How do I test for it? How do I eradicate? So did make this PowerPoint. I'm going to share the screen here, and this PowerPoint is actually on. Um, let's see. Come on. It's a little slow, but there it goes. Yep, still not. Hmm. Well, you might have to see the sides. This is all on the OPP website, but it's kind of old. Well, it's not, I mean, probably 5, 6 years old, but we've found some things out since then, and it was a good thing to update it. So I'll go through this kind of go through it quickly, but you can look at it closer on the OPP website and a society website. And I just put a plug in. It's only $10 a year to join it. It's all we do is advertise. We just use the money for advertising. So to get people to call and learn about the disease. But most people want to know how to eradicate it, how to diagnose. They want to get to the guts of it, but you have to know about the virus and kind of realize how it works. Uh, it still won't go from
Do
there.
I
It
need
goes.
to?
Okay, there
Did
it
it go?
goes.
Okay.
Got it. Got
I
it.
didn't know if,
Um,
okay, it's working now, Holly.
yep. Can
Okay,
you see it?
not yet.
You can't see it?
Let me make you a co-host. That might help.
Jeez, it worked last night,
I
didn't it?
know we ran through this last night.
I'm
There.
sorry.
Hey, you're fine. Okay, you're a co-host now,
Yeah.
and you
What
might.
should I do? Should I share it again?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I will get out of this and I'll share it again. Okay. I'm here. I'm talking away, thinking you can see what I'm talking about.
So much for practice, right?
Can you see that?
Not yet.
It- Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Let
Oh,
me see what else I need to do. Host tools. Host tools for share. Hang on. There, it's on. My host tools are on that you should be able to share.
for heaven's sakes. Okay, we'll try it one more time. I'll try it again. Share screen. Hmm.
And then pick your screen that you want to share.
Yeah,
There, no, it might have done something. Hang on.
you are screen sharing.
There we go.
Okay, it's like it was real slow or something. I don't know. Okay, is that better? Can you
Yep,
see it?
we can see it. It's not
Okay.
in. Yep, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. Well, blah blah. So anyways, It's a lentivirus, all right, which means it's a slow virus, and it's only known as OPP in the United States. It's made over the rest of the world, and there are several countries that were. I should have maybe looked to see if they still are, but I think they are. Most of them are islands. It's easier to control disease and entering and exiting. Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, and Finland. Um, Now, some of the other known lentiviruses, almost every mammal has their own lentivirus. CA in goats, a lot of people are familiar with. Equine infectious anemia in horses that you test Coggan test for. Feline leukemia in cats, immunodeficiency virus in cows, and of course, HIV in humans. So it's a slow growing virus that's not highly contagious. Um, and Signs of infection, it, it's pretty rare because it's so slow growing. It's pretty rare to see clinical signs before around 2 years of age. If a ewe lamb's at 1 and she's been infected for almost a year, she may have some subclinical signs and not, bounce back, put weight back on. But most of the time, it's in older animals that you see the clinical signs, and they're unresponsive pneumonia, hence the name ovine progressive pneumonia. Unresponsive meaning that you can give them antibiotics and it doesn't do any good. They usually will get a bacterial infection secondarily, um, but you can't cure it. There's no cure or vaccine for it. But the most common sign that people see is the heart udder. And lack of milk. The lambs are hungry. The udder looks like it's got bilaterally, it looks like it's got lots of milk in it, but it's firm and it doesn't have any milk. And so the lambs get hungry, and some producers, they have high wean lamb death losses. Lambs don't grow as well. Lambs are stealing all the time. That's usually what people notice. Weight loss despite normal appetite, they just waste away. Uh, Occasionally, you'll see arthritis. That's more common in CAE in goats, and then once in a while, it may affect the central nervous system, but that's pretty rare. But the majority of the animals who are infected have no signs at all until they get older. They may never, show signs. Uh, and it's funny, some flocks will just be devastated by it, and other ones seem to be able to live with it. And I'm sure that has something to do with genetics, but needs to be um, it needs to be researched more. Um,
Dr.
this is an
Holly,
old,
I have a
yeah,
quick question on that.
yeah.
So we've over the last couple, well, not really last couple years, but since we've been raising sheep, we've had 1 to 2 ewes come up and their bag is fine. Both sides are the same and they're perfectly fine. But it's like the tube in the tit has been scarred. Can that be a symptom?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you can get milk out of it. I use a dairy catheter to break that. I mean, it's like it's been
I
scarred.
doubt it.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
That sounds more like damage from aggressive lambs, maybe some previous bacterial infection, but no, I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
Usually it's not both sides, so usually it's just one that
it
you can feel the cord, you can feel the cord down the middle, or
correct.
and you can feel there's milk up further, but that's usually not a sign, no.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, what happens with this virus is it lives in the lymphocytes and the macrophages and the white blood cells, and it creates an immune response, and that immune response makes the tissues kind of. I just say it's like they become scar tissues. So all the productive um, alveoli, the whole the air sacs and the lungs and the milk sacs and the udder become they don't work anymore. They're just solid instead of nice soft sacs that will collapse. So that's why they don't make milk. It's not like they've got a flaming. They're not going to get a hard hot udder or become sick. There's just a knee joint, for example. The conditions you want to rule out, scrapie. Hopefully, we don't even have to worry about scrapie anymore, because it's becoming so. That we've really worked hard at eradicating it. Yonis, for the wasting, and give me OPP anytime over yonis. Yonis is very difficult to diagnose, and it's very difficult to eradicate because it lives in the soil, and I mean it's an environmental thing besides in the animal. Parasitism, poor teeth. Bacterial mastitis is probably the biggest. People call me and talk about, no milk, or and when you question them, it might be just one half that's bad. So that's with you have to remember with OPP, it's both sides. It's even the udder is evenly affected, not just a half. Poor nutrition, and of course, any caseous lymphadenitis, the internal abscesses that cause the wasting. Um, the NAMS report, that's National Animal Health Monitoring System that the USDA does every year. They choose a different species, but they did one. I should have looked this up, but I think it was in the early 2000s, and they did it again, repeated it, and it hadn't changed. They, besides all sorts of other monitoring for management and diseases, they tested OPP. For OPP, they did a serology test in 682 flocks all over the country, 21,000 sheep. Um, and but when you see the results, and at the bottom, only 1% believe that their sheep were infected. A lot of them had never heard of it. I hear that a lot. Although, like you said, it's become people are hearing more about it, reading, becoming more concerned about it now. But the results of that survey was that 36% of the 682 flocks had at least one positive. Some may have had 100, some may have had one, but 36% of the flocks were infected. And 24% of the sheep that were tested were positive. And the open range flocks, the western big flocks, were the heaviest incidence of infection. 80% of the flocks were positive, 45% of the sheep. And that's it's so much harder to control it, test and cull with those big flocks. It's understandable. And 36% of the farm flocks, smaller flocks in the states were infected. So it's very prevalent. I was talking to pig producer anyway, because you're supposed to call them pigs, not hogs anymore. And they just couldn't believe that 36%, this virus was in 36% of our flocks, and nothing was ever done about it. That would never happen, with pigs. So it's considered an iceberg disease. We've got scrapie, you've got Johne's, CL, and OPP, where when you see a clinical sign, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's you've got a whole lot more of them in there that are brewing underneath. Um, uh, it's Many flocks, they've always told me, "Oh, I know I've got it, but I just, when I see a clinical sign, a clinical animal, I just ship them out." And I don't think they realize how much production they're leaving and they're losing. And they worry so much about genetics, but I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can evaluate your genetics if you've got this underlying brewing all the time that's destroying tissues in these animals that you don't know how much they possibly could produce. These are just some of the quotes that we have taken out from people that is very nice. Economically, OPP is one of the most important diseases affecting sheep in North America. So there's this controversy, and I don't know anybody on right now. Uh, for years and years and years, up until maybe 10 years ago, many really prominent industry leaders denied the fact that their OPP had any economic impact to the sheep industry. And they kind of put us down for saying there was, and thought we were foolish, and poo-pooed what we were trying to do, just getting information out, because many of us had problems with it and really could see the devastation. But they were going back to the study that was done in like 1990 at the Du Bois Research Center. And it was called The Prevalence and Effect of Subclinical Ovine Progressive Pneumonia Virus Infection on Ewe and Lamb Production. And what they found was that there was no difference in performance of the lambs that were weaned from the sheep that were 50% infected, were had no difference in weaning weights from the 50% that were test negative, the ewes. So that was what they said, well, can't be economically significant then. Well, what we found out after talking with the shepherds that were doing, they were in graduate students that were shepherds out there, and they have become you know their names. They're very prominent and university professors, PhDs. We talked to them. We talked to three of them. They all said the same thing, that they started out with 3,600 ewes. After a month, they sheared, and then they bled. They tested at shearing time, and then they ran the sheep up to the mountain pastures. So they only tested 3,000. Well, before that time, within that month, they had shipped out, or they had died, 600 of those ewes, because they were so heavily infected with OPP that they couldn't even raise one lamb. And that was not disclosed in this study. So if that's not economically significant, I don't know what is. So I just think people should know that. Those who have recognized OPP as being a major health issue, have been ignored. And so now I'm very happy that people are more interested in it. And I know some of these young progressive shepherds they are really concerned about health and production and keeping track of it, and that's good to know. So the producers' complaints that I get, I guess we've talked about that already. Buying lots of milk replacer, high death rate in the lamb pens because of lack of colostrum, and then the ewes fail to bounce back after weaning. So transmission, I think we did talk about this. One thing nice about this virus is that you buy it and you sell it, where you get rid of it when you get rid of the sheep. So you buy it when you bring in infected animals in, and if you get rid of those infected animals, it does not live in the soil, it doesn't live on the fences, it only lives a few minutes outside the body. But respiratory secretions and nasal discharge, coughing, I think we learned a lot from this COVID. 6 feet away, well, that's as far as, these respiratory, the cough secretions can be passed along. And, in the winter in Minnesota barns, that doesn't take much, because we house them inside. But that's the most important route. 79% of the infections occur adult to adult. And used to be thought that colostrum in the milk of infected ewes it was the most important, and it is important, but only, and as we've tested these lambs that have been weaned from infected flocks, maybe 10-20% of the lambs will be end up being positive. And of course, just like it's in the blood, so shared taggers, needles, tattooing equipment, and that kind of thing can pass the infection along. I put this goat up because a CAE virus cannot infect sheep, but many people raise goats and sheep together, and it can the sheep can recognize the virus and then test positive for OPP because it's a small ruminant lentivirus, and that test will test for both the CAE and the OPP virus. So you just have to be aware of that, and of course, contact people like to show and go to fairs and things. So. Do a lot of people accept the signs as normal? Yes. All lambs steal. And uh, move on to this one. So, but animals carrying the OPP virus can appear very healthy and free of infection, and you really don't know that, but they still can shed. They'll shed the virus. And you don't know, until you really test them. So, testing, um, and people say, do I have to test the whole flock? No, I wouldn't test the whole flock unless you know that the virus is there. So, we test a few of the older clinical animals, got necropsy, the history, the pneumonia. Adult sheep should not get pneumonia. They may cough, but they don't get it's pretty rare they get bacterial pneumonia. Lambs, that's a lamb thing. They're very tender and it's common. So you get pneumonia in an adult sheep, I would definitely test for OPP. There is a statistically significant portion of flocks that you can test to determine. I'm not good at statistics, and you can get the exact chart on the OPP Society website, but it's say you've got 100 sheep, you're testing 100 ewes. I think you have, excuse me, you have 100 ewes. You only have to test, I'm going to say 50. And if you get one positive, you have a 95% chance of detecting at least one positive animal if at least 5% of the flock is infected. So that's something to kind of know for large flocks. So you're going to be testing for the antibodies in the serum, and they're slow to develop. It's a slow virus. But the virus lives in the lymphocytes. Like I said, it creates this immune reaction, but it's very slow to actually develop the antibodies that you can pick up in blood. Um, so negative tests, you get negative tests in animals from an infected flock. If an infected flock, you have to repeat that test because they may be infected, but the antibody level is not high enough for the test to pick up. And I put this only used in an accredited laboratory. It seems like so many people use these pop-up mom and pop laboratories all over the place. And if they're not accredited, I wouldn't trust them. All the state laboratories are accredited, and some of them are very reasonable to use and good diagnostic laboratories. And the other thing that people want to do is mail in whole blood. And you shouldn't do that, in the mail. The blood gets all shook up, hemolyzes the red blood cells, and the tests I don't think, as accurate. So you just have to mail in the serum, and serum is very stable. And we can, talk about that. But you mail the liquid part, leave the red blood cells in the garbage. Okay, there's two tests in the serology tests in the United States. They're both ELISAs, and they're very, very sensitive. And one is licensed and one is not. And this one, there's so many acronyms. It's the VMRD, SRLV, C ELISA test. And it's the only one licensed. It's what all the main, state diagnostic labs have. Some of them are better, are more, I'm not going to say they're more accurate, but some of them are more reasonable. They've worked with it more than others. But it tests for both OPP and CAE in goats. It's so because they're both small ruminant lentiviruses, but it was developed for CAE in goats. And years later, they finally validated it for OPP, but they used a lower positive cutoff. So for goats, the cutoff for being positive is 35% inhibition. It's just that's what it is. That's you'll get your results back, and they'll say anything over 35% is positive, anything under is negative, and they may have kind of in the middle. They may say retest. Well, when they validated for OPP, they used a 21% inhibition. And we've talked to the company about it, but it's just probably not worth it for them to relicense it, go through all the rigmarole. And you'll still get results that say 25%, if you get a 25% PI, is negative when it's not, it's positive. And we've worked with quite a few flocks that have been using the 35% for years and not being able to get anywhere because they're leaving positive animals in the flock. They're calling out anything over 35%. Once they started using the 21, they made good progress. I also asked the VMRD, the manufacturer of this test, how soon this test can pick up new infections. And they thought about 3 months. So if they've been introduced, if an animal has been introduced to the virus, about 3 months later, they feel that they could pick it up. I personally, I would feel more comfortable with like 6 months, but that's what the company says. The other test is called an ELI test, and we use this for quite a few years. It's not licensed in the United States. It's even more sensitive. It'll pick up positives anywhere from, I think they say 12 to 50 days after exposure. And we used it for our Minnesota trial. There was a reason the chlamydia vaccine was interfering with another test we were using. So anyways, it's the most common test used all over the world. And but we've had some issues with it lately. I have always been a little suspicious because I think it gives too many false positives. It's reported as a SN ratio. And so less than one is negative, more than one is positive. But you get a lot of them right in that 2, 1.5, and they report it as positive. And there's other antigens that I think it can react to vaccines. And we were suspicious that estrus was causing some interference. There's still some people like to use it. But last year we had some real problems with the test at the diagnostic lab at Minnesota. Minnesota's the only one who carries it. And we were seeing some historically negative flocks that were just doing their routine screening. And they were getting all these positives and high positives, panicking. In fact, we had one flock that had been negative for like 30 years, and they sent their tests. They came back, and it was half of them were positive. They didn't call, they didn't do anything. All they did was ship the animals. It was just horrible. Anytime you get a test back, I mean, no test is perfect, but anytime you get something like that back, please don't panic. There's probably something wrong with the test, and that's what they figured. They figured they got some bad test kits. It was terrible for the diagnostic lab because people were losing confidence. So they went back to the VMRD C-ELISA as their default test, and you have to ask for this one now. So anyways, other diagnostic tests, the PCRs, I'm not crazy about the PCR. I mean, if you find it, fine, it's probably positive, but it doesn't mean it's always in the blood. and it's very expensive. But it's out there. And like I said, repeat testing is required. So you've got to, you know, you've got to keep testing until test and call, or whatever you're doing until at least 2 whole flock negative tests are achieved, and then kind of monitor after that. That's if nothing else is brought in, if the flock is kept closed. And what we tell everybody is that if you don't follow through, it's very expensive. Everybody who's done it and is successful has said it's much worth the money, but it's you have to be very dedicated and write out a budget and see what you think. Is it better to just depopulate and buy some negatives? But you just have to follow through. Oh, genetic testing. I'm just going to go briefly through this. There is a genetic test, the TMEM 154, and it tests for susceptibility to infection. It does not test for resistance like Scrapie, like the R is dominant and Scrapie. This will just the desirable haplotypes, the 1s, the 4s, are according to Mark, a Meat Animal Research Center, who has discovered this. These haplotypes will give the flock more susceptibility to the infection. Now, what we used to test for them in our for the rams that we were using for the Minnesota project, and what we found was they were 1s, but when they were put into an infected flock, they seroconverted and became positive. Now, whether they ever would have developed clinical signs or shed the virus, we don't know. But it's a tool to use, especially these big flocks who can't possibly test and call and test and call. It's just daunting. It's too expensive, too much. But if they can start inserting some of the more susceptible haplotypes, genetic material into their use, then it's a tool. Don't forget to test the rams. That's how I got OPP in my flock 30 years ago. I did test it. It was negative, and when it came into my flock, he seroconverted. He was positive the whole time, but he just had tested negative. So there's just the transmission. They used to, like we talked about this. The old school was that you would snatch the lambs from the ewes before they nursed, and you raise them all the lambs, away from the flock artificially. And well, you can leave the lambs on the ewes and test and call and test and call. There is a way, because they only, like I said, 10 to 20% of the lambs will be positive when you wean them. So that is a possibility if you want to keep your genetics. Everybody's got a different management goal. I mean, if you find the virus in your flock, what are you going to do about it? I know the Australian whites are, I'm sure you want those genetics. So you probably might not test and call. You might do the test replacement lambs at weaning instead that way, but you're going to have to keep several different groups then. It depends on your facilities. I mean, if you're an accelerated flock, you start having these pens all over the place if you're keeping your positives. But if you're going to test and call adults, that's usually what people do. Just retest and call and test and call until you have a couple all negative flock tests. And if anybody wants to talk to me about the testing the replacement lambs, I'd be happy to talk to you. So where's the best place to send the samples? Like I said, there are almost every state, I'm sure, diagnostic lab has the OPP, or the small ruminant lentivirus test. These are the ones that we have found really like working with it. And I didn't put in South Dakota State at Brookings. They're awesome too. That's a really good and very reasonable lab. But Minnesota, they've been so good to us. We've worked with them for years, and they're just wonderful. Their serology department, Cornell, of course, so they've dealt with a lot of OPP issues. Colorado State and Washington State is well known for their Waddle lab up there. You can draw the blood yourself. Yes, you can. You don't have to have a veterinarian, but you're probably going to have to work with one to if you're if you're going to need a centrifuge. It kind of depends on what kind of tubes you're going to send in, or samples you're going to send in. If you're going to send in samples, a lot of them, caller had to give a heads up as to number of source and the number of samples, so they just are ready for it. And make sure they have enough test kits, and they watch for it. It can be shipped on ice, priority mail. You don't have to overnight serum samples. We had some that we were sending over to France, and they got over to France, and they came back, and they went back again, and they were still fine. So serum is very, very stable. Um, Make sure you label them appropriately with and make sure the IDs on your animals are good. There's nothing worse than getting a positive back and not finding the animal that because of transposing the ear tag number. That's really bad. So, you got to be very careful about that. And then, like I said, use recommended collection tubes. Centrifuge serum separator tubes are fine, but then they'll have the blood clot underneath that little, it's like a waxy separator. The blood goes underneath, the serum stays on top, mail those in. But otherwise, you can just you draw the blood, you let it sit on your counter, put it in the fridge. Next day, you pour off the the serum off that clot onto another tube, and that's good to go. Okay, this is just some experience. I don't think I have to tell anybody that, I mean, people who have eradicated it, just are so happy. I just talked to a guy yesterday who worked about 3-4 years. He made a lot of more work for himself. Sheep kept jumping the fence, but he had like 200 ewes, and he eradicated it, and he just is so happy now. Um, simple reasons to eradicate it. Uh, yeah. So, like I said, the OPP Concerned Sheep Breeders Society is a great resource. Um, Love to have you join. Uh, there's a DVD about the blood collection. Uh, so I wanted to leave. I don't know what time it is, but I wanted to leave time for questions, obviously. Um, Minnesota has their Board of Animal Health. We do have a sheep and goat OPP program there that we get negative status if we test. Once we test and have 2 negative full tests, we have to test 10% of our flock annually, and then we get on the list, the good list. Let's see. Okay, let's try. I'll get out of here. I'm gonna exit, and then I'll take questions. How do I?
How many years do you find it takes to knock down? I know that probably is flock by flock, but just out of curiosity, like if they find positives.
Okay, well, again, you said how long does it take
Yeah.
to eradicate?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it depends. You know, you could test every 3 months. and pull out the positives, that's kind of crazy, but people have done it. I would say, probably 2 years, maybe. Depends on how heavily the flocks is. I mean, we were working with some that were 100% infected. And so he didn't test and eradicate. He tested his ewes. They were all infected, but he liked his genetics. So he started working on his lambs. That he would test and call his replacement lambs. Um, it depends on how heavily it's infected.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
And you
in,
oh, go
in
ahead, Sana.
in a case like that, you said he worked on his lambs. So did he separate the lambs from the ewes?
He
At,
weaned them at early. We just, I mean, if you don't have very many and you really want to work, you can pull the lambs off like they used to say.
right.
Pull the lambs off right away. Don't let them nurse. I mean, people even tape their teats up. They covered their bags. They just were with them, caught them. They wouldn't let them lick them off. It was pretty crazy. So a lot of people didn't do it. So it's too much work. So what is recommended is wean them early, 6 weeks, and then you get them away from the ewes. And what by away, we've never exactly figured out how far away, but 10 feet seems to do it. But you also have to be careful about sharing, things. Further the better. It doesn't have to be on another farm. The building would be great, but even different ends of a barn. And then waiting. You might still have some maternal antibodies, that the lambs will test positive, but it's just from the maternal antibodies because they were in the milk. So 3 to 4 months after weaning, you test them. You'll have, if you have a pretty heavily infected flock, not 100%, but 10 to 20%, we found about 20% will be positive. You pull those out, you put them in the feedlot, and then 3 to 4 months later, you test them again. You might not have any more. You might have one more. And then, from there, you start developing your negative flock.
Okay.
And they never go back. And then you could do that every year if you wanted to. You could keep that positive flock, lamb them out again if you want those genetics, It's just a lot more work.
So it's just basically kind of a early weaning, and then you test those lambs, and then retest any positives and keep them separate
No, you retest any negatives.
or any negatives.
Yes, right.
And
Keep them separate.
keep them separate for life. Okay.
Yeah. So
How
what I test,
how
what
often is there a false negative or false positive? Sorry, false positive.
are there false positives?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Well, we were finding false positives with the Ellie test. Um,
Right, but I mean with
I'm
the
pretty,
baseline test that you do like.
I'm pretty confident with the VMRD C ELISA, the one that's licensed, that's in every diagnostic lab. If you use the lower cutoff, I didn't like it for a while because I thought it wasn't picking up. It wasn't, it wasn't sensitive enough. But once we looked into the history of the test, and we talked to the VMRD the scientists there, they said, yeah, it was validated for sheep, but it was at a lower cutoff. Um, I am not. I'm not afraid of false positives um, with that VMRD test. I with the Ellie test. I've had false positives, many with the Ellie test, and I've lost confidence in it. I don't know how they use it there all over the rest of the world. All the research shows that it's one of the best tests, but I don't know if United States or sheep are different than. For a while, I thought maybe it was blue tongue that was interfering with it, but anyway, I don't recommend it anymore.
And I know I've talked to Michelle Canfield, and she's not a real big fan of the genetic resistance. It sounded like you kind of have a similar opinion on the 1-1 or 4-4 haplotypes?
I think when that came out, everybody thought they could breed their way out of OPP. And it's not possible because you're never going to get rid of the virus um, with the genetics. I mean, I've been down to Mark. We've talked about them, and they don't know um, whether an animal who is 1-1 turns positive because they've been exposed to the virus, whether they ever will shed or become clinically sick, show clinical signs. And I haven't talked to them for, I don't know, 8 years or something, but they had a particular, I think it was a wether that they kept. And I think he was 10 years old and he died naturally. He was a 1-1. Was positive for OPP, and they did a thorough necropsy, and he had no signs of it. So that was a N of one that they claimed, and it's very possible that these. It just we need more research, but these animals who are 1-1s um, or 4s could be exposed, could turn positive. Their antibodies, immune system would recognize the virus. They would seroconvert, but they would never get infected. You know what I mean? So we don't know if I just I just think you've got to remove the virus, but it doesn't hurt to get some good genes in there that are haplotypes in there that will help them be not resistant, less susceptible to the virus.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I see Austin on there. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Austin, but when you guys were doing that study, did you guys ever go that direction? Austin had done a OPP study at one point.
Yeah, can you rephrase your question, I guess, or can you repeat it as far as the genetic testing stuff?
Well, I was asking, like the OPP Society's opinion on the 1-1 and 4-4 haplotypes, and she was stating that, it's better to just test and clear the virus. And that,
Yeah.
that there was ambiguity if they, she said they seroconverted, but wasn't really sure did they ever actually get infected proper.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if the research you had done ever shed any light there or not.
Mm-hmm. They don't really seem to get infected. Looking in bigger populations of like Katahdin flocks in particular, it's actually pretty cool because you'll have all these positive sheep, and then the ones that happen to be negative, the 10-15% are the ones that have the double copy. But like was mentioned, it is easiest and probably best just not to have the virus to begin with. If you do have the
Yeah.
virus, though, I look at it as kind of like starving out a fire. You can add those resistance alleles in there and then try to protect yourself from it spreading further. But there's US Mark has done some in recent years, like as of maybe 2-3 years ago, they released another paper, I think. And then University of Nottingham, though, is actively looking at the mechanism behind the resistance alleles. So they did a lot of work with all the sheep societies in Europe. Of particular interest to me, though, being a Texel breeder, is the UK Texel Sheep Breeder Society, and they actually have all those haplotypes in their database now, which is kind of cool as a result of their genetic testing research and testing for the virus as well. Basically, what I did in Pennsylvania, doing the combo genetic test and viral test on the same animals. If that answers your question, I hope.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's a tool, it's one more tool that, especially these large flocks that can't test and cull. I mean, it's just thousands of animals. It's you might as well try to get some genetics in there to help you. But a small flock that is able to test and cull, I wouldn't. if there were two rams, but I liked one better, but he didn't have the desirable didn't have a 1-1 or a 1-4. I mean, I wouldn't choose just because of that. But anyway, it's a tool.
Dr. Holly, it seems like there is no cure except to, test and call, but can the virus be passed through semen and embryo programs also?
Um, I would feel better if it was tested, if the animals that were collected were tested before. There was just something on the American AASRP chat list about this, and it was about CAE though, and it sounded like it's not likely that it will live through. What am I thinking of? The nitrogen, liquid nitrogen. It wouldn't live that far. Embryos, I don't know.
Mhm. But
They're
if somebody had genetics that they really wanted to save in a ram, could they possibly have him collected, freeze the semen so they could use it down the line, or would that be a danger of passing on the virus?
I would think you would be pretty safe from what I have just heard recently. Um, yeah, as long as it was, frozen. I mean, liquid nitrogen frozen, really, really frozen.
Uh-huh.
Not fresh. I wouldn't use it fresh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you found more people? It sounds like you have, but have you noticed more people being uh, inclined to test? Is the testing increasing now, or is it mostly just kind of put off to the side? Because it sounds like it's going to involve a lot of testing, but the people that I've talked to that have gone through it, 3, 4, 5 years ago, uh, said exactly what you did, that it made a huge um, increase in their profitability and in their flock in general.
Yeah, I'm here in Minnesota. I don't practice big anymore, and uh, I may be protected, not the one to ask, but I still get quite a few people who call me and ask me about, especially with the prices of lambs right now. Um, I think it's just like I said, these some of these young, really progressive shepherds. Um, they're very interested in it, and maybe not as much as they will test before they purchase the sheep rather than trying to put out the fire later, like someone says. And that's what anybody who asks me and they want to get into sheep, I said, just make sure you start. It's much easier to start with healthy sheep than try to develop them later. And according to, I think they test a lot of sheep at in Minnesota. Their price is pretty good. Um, it uh, and because Minnesota, I think, has become kind of well known for being concerned about OPP. Um, People send it here, and I know they test a lot of sheep. In fact, they're developing kind of a biosecurity panel like Waddle has in Washington, where they will test for, I think it's a panel that tests for OPP, Yonis, and CL. And Minnesota's going to have one now too. Because there's other issues other than OPP out there. Like I said, this is one of the easier ones to get rid of.
I have a quick question. So I had a grant through the Center of Poultry Livestock Excellence that John alluded to, where we did genetic testing, but we also tested for the virus, OPP virus. The
Hmm?
flocks that tested positive, at what point can they consider themselves negative? Like if they continue testing, when can they feel confident that they removed the virus successfully?
Well, if if they have, we usually say at least two complete negative flock tests, and nothing is
Would that be like
added.
over 2 years or?
Yeah, yeah. So 6 to 12 months. But then they have to continue kind of monitoring it. Um, I would say if someone's going to say, I've got 100 ewes I want to test, you test them, you remove the positives, and then you have to wait from the day you remove the positives, not from the day that you tested, because sometimes, they won't remove them for a while. Then another 6 months, you can make it shorter than that. And then another 6 months, um, and then maybe one more a year later to make sure. But you can't add anything in either, or else you can only add in test negative animals. If I buy rams, I buy them from very few flocks, and I don't like buying them because you get other things besides OPP you can't see, and
Yeah.
and I will test them. I'll bring them home. They're from a test negative flock, supposedly, which you never know. But I bring them home and I test them once, and then I'll test them again about 3 months later before I even use them usually. So so far it's worked.
Mhm.
Do you have an average cost for these tests?
I'm Minnesota and Wisconsin, South Dakota. They're about $6.50 a test. That's what the diagnostic lab charges. Now, if you're going to have a veterinarian do it, um, of course, it's going to at least double, because obviously this is what they pay the diagnostic lab. But and then if you're from out of state, some of these labs have out of state charges. Um, Minnesota doesn't, but they will have a kind of a handling fee, $10, whether you send in one or you send in 1,000. It'll be a $10 accession fee or something like that.
Okay,
But I
and
know some of them will be $15. I mean, some of them are very expensive, and
Yeah,
um,
Waddle, I think hits you with, God, it's pretty high, like 25, $30 or something as the accession fee.
oh,
It's the
yeah.
last time I did it, it was surprising, and I'm in Washington.
Oh, okay.
would it be possible to show the screen of how it's spread again?
Is it still on? Is my slideshow still on?
I have a
Yeah.
slide of the
Okay, yep,
Breeders' Society, but I'd like to
yeah,
see the
yeah.
one that how how it's spread.
I should know this better. Transmission and occurrence.
Yes.
Okay, let me just get
Uh,
this so it's full
okay.
screen. How can I do that?
Oh, I can take a picture of it.
It's spread it's spread through coughing, nasal discharge. It's respiratory. I mean that's the most common way. I mean, other than blood, if you think about HIV, sharing needles, etc.
Okay,
Um,
right.
And that's one thing that was the big discovery that was like aha moment was that before they were saying that even with CAE that adult to adult spread is not important. Well, they found it is 70 to 90% of infections happen that way. Only 10 to 30% happen through colostrum and milk from the ewe to the lamb, vertical. So, and what we have seen, and this is just my I don't know, idea theory is that you'll have, we used to say, oh, you got to test the dam. If the dam's negative, the lamb is okay if you're going to buy, by an animal. Well, that's not true at all. We find plenty of lambs that are negative from a positive U, and vice versa. And what I kind of think is that you've got a positive U, and she's got milk. She's got the virus in her milk, and uh, the animal, but she also has antibodies. And so the lamb is drinking the milk, but he's also getting some antibodies. But you've got the you that's negative, and living with all these positive other yous, and the lamb's drinking clean milk, but being exposed respiratory to. So you'll get positive lambs from negative yous.
Okay. And just wiping off like your taggers and things like that with alcohol would be sufficient to.
That would be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
The testing that we're talking about, they can also test for um, uh, CLL and maybe Yonis at the same time.
Yes. Waddle does that. They have it's called a biosecurity panel, I think. The the OPP test is a lot more. I have confidence in that. Than the Yonis test, and the CL test can be um, not as I don't know, accurate, I want to say, but it'll give you an idea anyways.
So it sounds like it's a good idea to, if you have anything that's positive, to have it retested then.
Yeah. No, well, no, not necessarily. It depends why are you testing it, and the level of what, if you have if you are gonna, I don't know what you're thinking of, but if you've got a RAM you're gonna buy. In fact, I just had this, a guy, he tested his RAMs before he bought them, because he might want to make sure they were positive, I mean negative. And if you want to,
Dr. Holly, we lost your voice. Uh-oh.
Like maybe your internet hiccuped. It says she's joining the meeting.
Oh, does it? Hmm. And she's not muted. So, uh-oh. It must have really hiccuped. She was having trouble with it a little bit last night. If anybody has any questions, if she's able to come back on, just unmute yourself, or I'm sure she's willing to take email questions.
Yep, the miracles of modern.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work, right? I'm trying to call her right now.
I think we lost her. Internet died.
Yeah, and she won't answer her phone, so maybe everything died for her, maybe they had a power. I don't know. Something's happened. Okay. So David, I don't know what you want to do.
Well, I guess to summarize, it sounded like testing and culling is the main thing. It's quite difficult depending on the expense you have in the sheep, but it seems like the only way to go. I asked about the additional testing with the one sample because when we sent samples in, we seem to be able to do all three with the one sample. If we can't get Dr. Holly back on the line, why I guess we'll have to maybe send any questions in.
David, I'm on the phone with her. Let me find out here. Just a second.
All right.
I do know, like she said, Waddle will do the biosecurity. I've had someone else I know use one of these smaller labs, Eagle Talon Enterprises. I know she said she didn't like the smaller enterprises, but this lady I talked to really does like this lab. And they do the same thing. It's like $18 for young CAE, OPP, CL.
Yeah.
Waddles is comparable, but you got to tack on the case fee, which is I'm going to memory, but I want to say it's like $25 or something.
Yeah. We did several, and I think it was in that price range for the three tests in one with one sample.
Austin,
Put the audio and video back on. Whoop. Okay. Thanks. I don't know what happened. All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
I was just going to ask Austin Brown. I see he posted that the Pennsylvania Diagnostic Lab has a biosecurity panel as well. Do you know what tests are included in that, Austin?
It's the same standard as the other labs with the CL, Yonis, and OPP. And then they have an abortion panel as well, but those
Yeah.
usually don't come back with any results.
Okay.
I think the Waddle one, it used to be about $35, for those three tests. And they're all ELISA tests. There's a CL test they used to call it the shit test. I think it's a SHI test. That just was so difficult to interpret and unpredictable. And I just, but the new CL ELISA probably would be, if you're going to buy something, be nice to have it all negative and when you're purchasing, but.
We've heard a lot of large genetic companies say things like it's such a common problem that you have to just live with it or manage for it. But it sounds really like the best way to manage for it is to find it, test for it, and cull those animals out.
Yeah. You can't manage it. It's a virus. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you guys use a lot of embryo. I mean I know the Australian white. But I have worked with when I used to practice, other the people, hamps and kind of big show people that would use embryo transfer, and they'd buy recipients that were I just can't believe it. So you want these ewes to be raising these expensive lambs, I get ugh. So you got to be careful all around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was trying to make, that some of the the large companies that furnish the recipients are doing little or no testing on them. So you
Yeah,
really have to make sure.
that is unbelievable to me that they're just asking for, because they're dealing with some pretty expensive animals and embryos, and that they could
Yeah.
ruin somebody's flock. Yeah, I that I've heard the stories. I've talked to them.
Mhm.
Are there any vaccines? Should you wait a certain amount of time after you give any vaccines to avoid false positives or false negatives?
I don't think you're going to run into false negatives because vaccines just, gear up their immune system, and if their immune system's really going, it might give you a false positive. But I'm not afraid of that with the VMRD. If you, I'm feeling pretty good about that one. But I wouldn't. You're not going to vaccinate. It takes a couple weeks for the immune system to recognize. That's why you boost them in 2 to 3 weeks. So I would wait, 2 to 4 weeks. A month would be good after vaccine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other questions for Dr. Holly?
Have you guys had you ever heard about this? No, my internet connection is unstable again. Have you ever heard about the Idaho um study that caused everybody to not think that OPP was economically important? Or is that old news way, way back?
I had not, I live in Idaho and I had not heard that. I find that very interesting and perplexing a little bit, that they did that. And uh, yeah, I've worked with Du Bois a little bit, a couple of those people, and the first time I worked with them, I was very, it was a very enjoyable, and they helped a lot. And then there's been a couple times where it's like their focus is on wool, and that's it. And we reached out to them to try to get them to work with us on some other things, and it was definitely maybe not cold shoulder, but borderline cold shoulder, and I was a little surprised. So I have mixed reviews about Du Bois.
A lot of these university flocks have infected flocks. They don't care. They'll sell rams, and somebody just told me the other day they got a ram from I don't know which university it was, but I do, but I'm not going to say. And it was positive, and I thought, wow, that's pretty bad. Mm.
Wow, yeah.
I have to ask Ed Dubrick, are you from New York? Answer me.
He might have. He lives, I think, in Illinois right now, and
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I am solely responsible for the livelihood of 6 small children right now. So it took me a little bit to get off mute, but I actually live in Illinois.
Okay, there was an Ed, but I don't. It's very very familiar name, but he was at Cornell that I worked with Q Fever, and I guess it's not you. You sound too young, anyways, because he was old, and this was just 25 years ago.
Hmm.
Go back to your kids. Mhm. Q Fever is another interesting one. Mhm.
I
Well,
guess
I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize it was in the same family as HIV.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. They're all lentiviruses, just so not highly infectious, I mean, but infectious kind of, yeah.
Mhm.
Not like measles or something.
Well, I kind of like to put a little plug in here for Dr. Holly and the OPP Society. I think it's something that we should support and join for sure, and and encourage everybody to do more testing because it evidently is the only way we're going to maybe get ahead of this virus. And and again, everybody that I've talked to that has gone through it has been very happy they were able to reduce or eliminate it from their flock financially wise. So it's something I think we should support. I'd like to thank Dr. Holly for being here. And would you mind if any of our members or listeners would email or message you any questions they may have later?
Sure, I'm always happy. That's my well-paying job at the OPP as an outreach director. Now that I'm pretty much retired, no, I'm happy to. Sometimes I can't answer right away because these conversations take time to explain, but I will get back to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking your time to enlighten us all on this, and hopefully we'll be able to help support what you're doing and get ahead of this. Then, thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
Well, thanks for the interest and good luck to everybody. Yeah,
All right.
thanks.